Sponsor yields.
Thanks, Mr. Gottfried. Last year we talked about this, and I asked if you could define self-image in your bill. Have you reached a conclusion on that? Because last year you said you needed more time. So you've had a year. Any movement on that issue? Can you define self-image in your bill?
Well, first of all, let me apologize. I have not spent the last year meditating on my answer to your question.
Yeah.
Secondly...
Well, it wasn't that hard of a question last year.
Right. But I still haven't spent the year thinking about what my answer would be when you raise it again.
Okay.
Secondly, self-image means your image of yourself. It's plain English words. Our laws are filled with plain English words. It's a wonderful language. It was good enough for the King James translators. We can apply it here. Our judges apply plain meaning of ordinary English words thousands of times every day.
So then we would be in agreement, according to what you just said, that self-image is the way you view yourself. Pretty self-explanatory, but you'd agree with that. That self-image
well, it's your image of yourself, yes.
Correct. So your bill says that you cannot discriminate based on having or being perceived as having a gender identity, self-image, appearance, behavior, or expression, whether or not that gender identity, self-image, appearance, behavior, or expression is different from that traditionally associated with the sex assigned to such person at birth. Therefore, the language of your bill states, does it not, that you cannot discriminate based on self-image.
You cannot discriminate based on the fact that, or the perception that someone's self-image differs from that associated traditionally with the sex that was associated with them at birth.
Right, that's what I said.
Maybe, but okay.
That's what I said. You
the bill
cannot
says
discriminate. Sorry, go ahead.
The bill says what it says. Yeah.
Okay, so the bill says what it says, but yet you stated repeatedly that, for example, in the lumberjack analogy that somebody was using, or any man dressed as we are in this chamber, that you stated that you could, in fact, stop them from going into the ladies' room, or if they did and they got arrested, that it wouldn't hold up in court. Correct?
That is what I said, and the reason I said that is that Mr. Graff's bearded lumberjack would have a difficult, I think impossible time persuading the judge or jury that he does in fact have that self-image.
Why?
He might claim that that's his or her self-image. I don't think that claim would fit the totality of the facts.
The facts are that the man would state, my self-image is that of a woman. Under your bill, I don't even know that that could be questioned. How do you prove what your self-image is? You can't prove that. It's your self-image.
You prove it by looking at the totality of the circumstances. Similarly, if the law allows a religious institution to hire only people of that religious faith, you might say, well, what's to stop someone who isn't of that religious faith from walking in and falsely claiming to be part of that religious faith? Well, the answer is you look at all the facts, and the fact that someone makes a claim doesn't make it a fact.
But under your bill, it does.
No, it doesn't.
How does it not? It says you can't discriminate based on self-image. You couldn't even define self-image for me last year. Now you can. But your bill says you cannot discriminate. Therefore, if it is my self-image...
Hold on, Mr. McLaughlin, would you hold 1 minute? Mr. Morelli and members, it's getting hard to hear the debate. We've got a lot of groups chatting. Please, staff, would you clear the aisles while we debate?
Therefore, thank you.
Hold on 1 minute. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, pardon me for the interruption, but in order to move our proceedings along, I'd like to call a committee on rules in the Speaker's conference room. If members of the Rules Committee would proceed, Speaker Silver is awaiting their arrival.
Committee on Rules, Speaker's Conference Room. Back to you, Mr. McLaughlin.
Well, I wasn't finished.
I'm sorry.
Based on your bill, you can't discriminate. I don't understand how under your bill language that anybody would have the right to tell another person what their self-image was. You can't read their minds. All they simply have to do is say, I self-identify as a woman right now, at this moment, and I can access the ladies' room or the locker room. True or not true?
Not true. The law is filled with instances where that make reference to someone's mental state or such as one's intention. And while we have not figured out any way to climb inside people's heads and see what their intention is, for 1,000 years or more, our legal system has discerned what someone's intent or purpose, etc., is by looking at the totality of the circumstances.
Yep.
Our courts do that all the time, and the fact that someone says, I did or didn't intend something, doesn't necessarily prove the point any more than someone saying, this is my self-image, doesn't necessarily prove or disprove the point. You still look at the totality of the circumstances, and you keep saying that I couldn't define this in last year's debate. Again, I don't have last year's transcript in front of me. Maybe you do. My guess is that you were pressing me to say more than I was prepared to say about what it meant,
Nope.
which was probably very similar to what I've said today, and you construed that as being I couldn't define it.
No, you specifically said you would need more time.
I would need more time perhaps to say more than I was prepared to say then.
So, but this year you're able to define it, so we're making progress at least on what self-image is.
Well, you can read that any way you like. I think what I'm saying today is consistent with what I said last year and the year before and the year before that.
Completely inconsistent, but we'll move on.
Okay. Well, maybe afterwards you can Xerox that copy of the page in the transcript, which I'm sure you've read, and send it to me, and maybe I'll have to apologize to you.
No, you don't have to apologize, but I'd be happy to send it to you.
Please
You just
do.
simply said you'd need more time if you were going to be on the record
Yeah, but more
as to
time for
defining
what?
what self-image was.
But please do send it to me.
Oh, I absolutely will.
Good.
You talked about, do you think that we have any problem at all with women being attacked in ladies' rooms or locker rooms? Do you think that problem exists out there in society?
I believe it does happen, yes.
Okay, because I can give you a couple.
And if it does happen, it's a problem.
Okay, it definitely happens. I give you numerous examples of it happening. Michael Robert Martinez in Tempe, Arizona, Ottawa, Canada. Canada, by the way, has this law, and they're experiencing significant increases in attacks on women in restrooms since this passed. But a man was given 3 years in prison after he assaulted a 15-year-old in a woman's bathroom at the Nepean High School. Another one in Halifax, a woman was assaulted at the Park Lane Mall. So it does happen, not by transgendered people. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we already have an issue with men attacking women in ladies' rooms. Do you think that your bill facilitates men being able to access ladies' rooms?
Well, first of all, none of your hypotheticals, I would bet, involve any person who relied on or claimed he was relying on Canada's or anybody else's transgender discrimination legislation. I'll bet none of those instances has anything whatsoever to do with any aspect of this bill.
How do you know?
How do I know?
Yeah.
Because I challenged you last year to come up with such an example. I've challenged other people in every single debate, and I'm guessing that if in the intervening year you had found a single example, you would have been telling us about it, and so I'll bet those cases have nothing to do with this bill.
Here's the point. The bill exists in Canada. Therefore, since the bill exists, you remove all the barriers. No one questions the men going into the ladies' room.
Not true.
What do you mean not true? How do you know?
True.
You just said I can't prove it. How can you prove that's not true? If the bill exists, wait a minute, if I stop a man under your bill from going into the ladies' room, you get charged with a hate crime, correct? If I prevent someone from entering the ladies' room, you get charged with a hate crime because your bill puts it in a hate statute.
No. No.
No?
Just like whoever set off the bomb at the Boston Marathon wasn't doing it because Massachusetts has a transgender law. Has nothing to do with it. What possible connection is there between some jerk of a 15-year-old deciding to go into the women's room and assault somebody? What does that have to do with the transgender law? The kid wasn't claiming that he was a woman and therefore had a right to go in there, right? Am I right?
The example was not a 15-year-old. It was a 30-year-old
whatsoever to do with the bill.
Mr. Speaker,
and I'm going to keep saying that until you show me how it has the slightest connection to the bill.
I'm sorry, but I can't take this anymore. If we are going to insist that someone be quiet, the other one has to be quiet while the other one's asking and answering questions. This is getting way out of hand, and I just think that you need to be doing something about this, please.
We would remind members that there should be decorum and civility on both sides.
So, my point there is this. With this law in place, nobody's going to question after a while. They were just going to make an assumption, I would think, that, hey, man's claiming he's a woman. There's nothing stopping it. That's the whole problem here. You remove any kind of barriers from that. You do.
Not true. The trespass laws, a whole slew of laws, stop a man from doing what you're describing.
Not under your bill. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
This bill has nothing whatsoever to do with the facts you're describing. Show me a single case in which somebody accused of doing what you're describing claimed that they had a right to do it because of a transgender discrimination law. Show me one case in the history of humanity in which that happened, and I'm guessing, unless you're like doing some gotcha routine, I'm betting that you don't have a single example. Am I right?
You think because
Am I right that the kids you're talking about never claimed?
I'm not talking about kids.
The men, the old people, the young people, the middle-aged people. I don't think you have a single solitary example in which anybody claimed that a transgender discrimination law entitled them or protected them in doing any of the things that you have described. And until you show me such an example, I think it is fair for all of us to assume that you don't have such an example. Because if you did, you would have given it to us. You wouldn't have kept it a secret. So I don't want to ask you a question because that's not my job. I'm not allowed to ask you a question. But
yes, you just did ask me a question.
Well, but I don't think you have a single example.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. The very fact that if your bill became law, you would remove the ability to even ask the question, sir.
No, I would not.
Let me finish. I did not interrupt you, and here you go again.
Sorry.
Your bill would prevent somebody from even questioning the self-image of someone. Otherwise, you're saying that you're okay with discriminating against people whose self-image you're not quite sure of. That's what you're saying, because your bill would say that if somebody dressed like all of the men in this chamber are, walked into the ladies' room, and just simply, all they've got to say with your bill is say, I self-identify as a woman. That's all you have to do. And if this bill becomes law, I'm not so sure anybody would even question it. So the lack of it happening so far, you're content that that means it'll never happen?
Well, Mr. McLaughlin, you keep saying that my bill does this, that, and the other thing. My bill, I mean, this is America. You can say whatever you want about my bill. It happens to bear no resemblance whatsoever to the bill. The bill doesn't say any of the things that you are saying it says. I don't think any reader of English could read the bill and conclude that it says any of the things that you're saying. And I said that in response to Ms. Corwin. I said it in response to Mr. Graff. I said it in response to Mr. Saladino. I'll say it in response to you. The bill does not say that, and gender laws all over the country, all over the state of New York, have never been applied as if they said that, and no one has ever claimed legally that the law does say that. You have no example of it ever having happened. So I'm not making this up. I'm not guessing it. I'm basing this on the English language and history all across this country, and you're basing it on the fact that a 15-year-old somewhere in Canada did something disgusting, and therefore it must have had to do with Canada's transgender law. Maybe he was taking advantage of their single-payer health system. Maybe he was taking advantage of the fact that they are a country whose sovereign is, wears a dress. I don't know, but I don't think you can make such a claim.
I've said 3 times I'm not talking about a 15-year-old. I'm talking about a 30-year-old that attacked a 15-year-old in a woman's restroom. So let's get that clear. Secondly,
everything that I just said still applies.
Then why do you think it was that in Massachusetts, Colleen Gary, a Democrat, pulled this provision from the bill over there, which I think it was her bill? She actually pulled this provision from the bill in order to protect women and children. Do you think she was wrong?
I have no idea what provision this person pulled from a bill. I am not familiar with the bill. I'm not familiar with the provision. And frankly, based on your description of incidents, I'm not inclined to respond to your descriptions of incidents.
Let's describe it a different way. Under your bill, can you give me your analysis of what would happen if a man walked into a ladies' room? There's no one left. Let's go again.
If that's all the facts on the case, the man would...
Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Goodell.
I'll withdraw.
Okay, so continuing, can you give me your, thank you, Andy. Can you give me your analysis of what would happen under your bill if someone self-identifies as a woman and enters a locker room or a restroom? What would happen?
Mr. McLaughlin, your time is up.